So I'm dealing with a stalker situation.
One of my biggest fears unfortunately became a reality.
He looked at me and the first thing he ever said to me was, "Are you scared of me?"
Probably should have said no, but he was like in my face and like I kind of just felt rude. So I was like, yeah, like I'll follow you, like whatever.
My brain just convinced me that this was either nothing, like I had imagined it, or that it was my ex trying to scare me.
So now he knows what car I drive and where I live.
Clearly she was just mentally ill, which we understand, but also we were being harassed, so it was a lot.
And you're wondering, Anastasia, why didn't you call the police? Well, I did multiple times, and you know what they did? Absolutely nothing.
Stalking feels as if it's becoming more frequent. In this new world of social media influencers and parasocial relationships, influencers of all sizes and everyday individuals are finding themselves being stalked not only online, but in some cases in real life as well. And this is most likely thanks to and with the aid of social media. Today's video, we're going to be talking about the normalization of stalkers, stalking, and the age of social media. And today, to help illustrate my point, I want to be sharing with you multiple examples, some maybe less serious and others incredibly dangerous. I want to first talk about this idea of the normalization of online stalking. And I mean, some would probably call it creeping because it probably sounds a little bit less creepy than stalking. However, we do now see this normalization of online stalking. This normalization of cyber stalking, creeping, insta stalking, it's become normalized in society. Finstas are becoming more and more popular and more common. And a lot of this may seem harmless, and in a lot of cases it probably is, but also it can actually be helpful and in our good interest to do so. Say a cute guy asks for your number and you're smitten and you're like so into him and you're really excited. You do a little bit of maybe Facebook or Instagram stalking and you find that he has a wife or a girlfriend. You dodged a bullet. And in those situations, it can be really helpful. But a lot of online creeping and online stalking is not always used in that way. In a lot of examples, online creeping, online stalking is done in a way which almost wastes our time and really doesn't help us. How many of us have found our ex's Facebook or new Instagram profile, or maybe somebody that we dated that did us wrong, or maybe our boyfriend's ex-girlfriend from like 5 years ago, or the guy we're dating's last girlfriend, and we're like, oh my god, she's so much prettier than us. This is his type, oh my god.
I saw this really cute guy at the grocery store the other day, so naturally I followed him to the checkout counter, and when he gave the cashier his credit card, I peeped it to see what his name was. And then I Googled him and found his social media profile.
And through social media, she finds his mom, who is apparently part of this book club. She joins that book club. She attends a meeting of that book club. She meets his mom, has a conversation with her. By chance, lets her know that she is single as a Pringle. Mom thinks, oh, this is great. My son is single. Let me match you up with him. They exchange numbers and he ends up setting up a date with her.
In these examples, it's not healthy. And it's a lot of the time can be a waste of our time. And I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. How do you think this type of behavior affects us, affects our relationships? Do you think it affects us at all? And before social media, what did people do? Like, what did people do? We didn't have social media. We didn't have these online footprints. Did people just meet love interests and take them for face value and get to know them? Was life better back then? I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below what you think about that. Back to the influencer discussion though, I know a lot of people say that this influencer industry, you have to take the good with the bad, and online bullying or harassment is just part of the job. And that may be true. Let me know if you agree with that in the comments down below. However, what I don't agree with and what I don't think is okay is literally being harassed daily, getting your address leaked, being doxxed, being stalked, feeling like your life is in danger or at risk. That to me should not have to be part of the job. And unfortunately for a lot of influencers, it can be. And falling down this rabbit hole of researching harassment laws, stalking laws, the criminal justice system, I just came to realize how unbelievably flawed it is. And with the way in which technology is moving so fast, we are seeing more frequent cases of stalking and more extreme cases of stalking and cyber stalking becoming more normalized. Something needs to change. I am not in any way blaming the victims of stalking, whether you're an influencer or an everyday individual. I do not believe that you deserve to be harassed, stalked, whether it be online or in real life. And of course, I do believe that there are ways each and every one of us can take precautions to live safer and be safer. However, I also don't necessarily like this idea of stay safe, girl, be safe out there, because it almost feels like 100% of the responsibility needs to be on predominantly women. However, men also can experience stalking. We will be getting into that in today's video as well. However, it feels as if the responsibility and the burden lies 100% on the victims or the potential victims. And I think so much more accountability needs to be held for these mentally ill, most of the time, who become infatuated with somebody enough to scare the living shit out of them. I think I read in Australia it's like 1 in 5 women experience stalking in their lives, and something like 1 in 13 men experience stalking in their life. So if you want to share with me your experience, if you feel safe enough to do so, please share with me your experiences in the comments down below. This video was also actually inspired by this one particular YouTube video that one of you sent me, so thank you so much for going ahead and doing that. We're not going to watch it in its entirety because it is over 26 minutes long. I'm going to be sharing some parts of it with you and we're going to discuss it. And this video here is why I also take such an issue with family channels. Just for some context here, this is body cam footage showing a 45-year-old Oregon man showing up to a 12-year-old girl's house in Ohio after cyber stalking her for 4 years. Timothy Nelson began watching the young girl on YouTube when she was 8 years old. His obsession with her grew over the years and he decided to make his way across the country to ask her on a date. He traveled across country to find this 12-year-old girl.
Yeah.
I'm seriously trying to get a date with the girl on the internet.
Okay, yeah, but you're going like door to door trespassing on all these people's properties.
That's trespassing? Knocking on someone's door is trespassing?
Yeah, if you don't have permission to be on their property, absolutely. So why are you going door to door if you're trying to meet some girl from the internet for a date?
I've been after her for 5 years and I haven't heard nothing from her. If I find her one day, that's fine. If not, I can leave. I just want a no answer or a yes answer.
So what's your long-term plan here? Because I mean,
long-term plan
we got several complaints about you coming up, knocking on people's doors, soliciting.
That's not right, man.
Well, that's why I'm here. I'm not just driving around.
That didn't happen. I'm just saying if I could get a yes or no answer for her, I would leave. You know?
I'm going to venture to say if you haven't found her yet, it's probably a no.
How are you to say that, man? I don't know what address.
Well, because you don't know where she lives. You don't even know who she is.
From who? Are you from Oregon?
I am from Oregon.
Oh, you got to take this guy in.
Why?
He's been harassing my 12-year-old daughter online.
That's how old she is?
Yeah. FBI is involved in it, so please.
The FBI? You know what?
All right, hey, stop talking to him. All right, step down here on the street, get off this property. So there's your answer. This girl you've been talking to is 12 years old. You're obviously an adult, so that conversation.
Forbid them not.
Hey,
forbid them not.
She is 12 years old. That is her parent. He will forbid whatever he chooses. Am I clear on that?
12 is very old. I was looking for a 6-year-old.
All right, that's disturbing.
12 is very old. I was looking for a 6-year-old.
All right, what's your first name?
My name is As Little Children.
As Little Children?
That's my full name.
So your first name is Az?
My first name is Az.
Okay, is it A-Z-Z?
As in, become as little children, or you will not enter the kingdom of heaven.
Right, that's not making any sense whatsoever. What is your government?
Whatever you think is paying you, whoever you think is paying you, I can pay you more.
So, well, you're not. These parents, like, I guess he found out mom's cell phone. I guess he called mom's cell phone a couple weeks ago, and like now he knows where they live, and so like they're petrified.
So there's no way the mom is on the internet in some capacity. This guy's after the mom, is he?
No, it's definitely the kids.
Okay.
It's definitely the kids. Yeah. So she's like, isn't there some type of anti-stalking or something? And I kind of heard like, can he be arrested? I go, well, he hasn't really done anything yet. She's like, well, I'm afraid he's going to abduct our child. I'm like, I totally understand that.
And this is what absolutely scares and makes me so deeply angry, like on a level like deep inside. And I'm sure if you're a woman, regardless of what gender you are, like if you're a mum or whatever, you will probably also understand this. He literally just said he hasn't really done anything yet. And this is the problem. This is why the system is so flawed, because most of the time, if these people haven't technically done anything, it's so hard to take them in and charge them with anything. Luckily, this particular man was actually found guilty of menacing by stalking, and he actually was sentenced to 4.5 years behind bars. But my issue is 4.5 years behind bars, in my opinion, is not long enough. 4.5 years, she's 12, so by the time he gets out, she'll be 16. Technically still underage. He's still going to travel across country or wherever she is in order to find her. It's truly disgusting to me. It makes me so angry.
I mean, and he would in a heartbeat. Like, I truly feel that, the way he's been acting. Pull up on the...
You don't even gotta be there. My ego at least.
What's Spence say?
He suggested inducing panic, but I don't really think it fits if they're the only victims, you know?
Yeah, but like, she's shaking in there, like the 12-year-old.
You can't leave the guy here. The trouble is, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree, and that's what I was explaining to the kids.
If you want, you can go watch this video in its entirety. I will have it linked in the description box down below. But you heard the officer say that she's terrified. She's in there shaking. She is 12 years old. She's terrified of this creepy 45-year-old Oregon man who showed up to her house. And her family, her mum, her dad, the neighbors are also most likely still to this day terrified. I mean, I don't know, this footage came out August 11th and apparently he's in behind bars now, so maybe they're not as scared now, but maybe they're scared for the day in which he returns. I doubt they still will be living in this house in 4.5 years. If I knew that this man was stalking my child and showing up to my doorstep looking for my 12-year-old child, thinking that they were still 6, you best believe I would not be living in that same house. This video, this 26-minute video, should be mandatory viewing for every family vlogger who decides to put their child on the internet. This could have been another case I looked into, but I think she was like a arts and crafts channel. She was like doing fun arts and crafts on YouTube. You wouldn't think that warranted a mentally ill man to show up and want to go on a date with your daughter. But apparently it can. The next story I want to share with you is very tragic. It is the story of the 33-year-old influencer. She was an Instagram model. Her name was Janae Gagnier, but she went by Miss Mercedes Moore on social media. And she had more than 2 million followers on social media. And she was actually unalived, I have to be really careful with my wording, by her stalker back in, I believe, 2021. So she was a big deal. She was sponsored by numerous fashion companies. She was sponsored by Fashion Nova. She actually partied with rappers like Drake. After this whole incident happened, I think he actually dedicated one of his albums to her. She was based in Houston, and most of the time she couldn't really go out without being recognized, or at least most likely ogled at by men, because she was incredibly striking. She was an Instagram influencer, a stripper, and a very successful OnlyFans model. If you haven't checked out my video regarding the influencer to OnlyFans pipeline, I'm gonna have that one linked if you wanna check that out. Her last and her deeply tragic encounter with a stalker was actually not her first. So she experienced her fair share of harassment over the years. Before she moved to Houston, she was living in New Orleans, and she actually had her address leaked. She was doxxed. She went ahead and moved to an apartment in a gated community in Houston. So again, back to my point, I don't care how horrible someone is. I don't care how much you dislike or hate somebody. Nobody deserves to have their home, their sanctuary, their safe place. Nobody deserves to have that information leaked online. She felt safer being in an apartment, and especially being in a gated community, you would assume that that adds an extra layer of security. Her stalker actually traveled from Florida, again, across country, to find her. It was unclear how exactly Mercedes' stalker found her. Apparently there was no messages or correspondence from his Instagram accounts to hers, which is even more alarming. And like, I don't mean to scare you. This video is a little bit scary, but this to me just goes to show that there was no warning signs. There was no repeated creepy, unsolicited continuous messages. He was lurking from across country and traveled all the way to Houston to find her. I do recognize that this is like incredibly dark and it's really sad. I will have an article linked if you want to read it in its entirety, but essentially her dad found her. He went over to her house and found her on the floor, and her stalker was actually lying in her bed with a knife. I think at the time he was barely alive. I think it took him like 2 days to pass. But this man again was incredibly mentally ill and disturbed. There was also writing all over her walls from this man using Janae's lipstick. The writing said things like, "I should have stayed in Florida. I wish I'd never met her." And there was another one that said, "I was used for money." This made people speculate that he was potentially a huge fan of her OnlyFans, and he paid money to see certain photos of her and her subscription, and he felt angry and he felt like she didn't love him and he was only being used for money. Switching gears for a moment, the 2 examples I have shared have been males. stalking women, like in the first example, that underage girl, and that is the most common scenario, I think, in terms of stalking. However, there are also experiences and there are also situations and scenarios in which women can be stalked by other women, or men can be stalked by women, or men can be stalked by other men. We're going to be getting into some other examples later on, but Logan Paul actually was somebody who did have a stalker as well. This article is from the Daily Mail. I'm going to have it linked below if you want to check it out as well, but it's an article from January 2024, just this year, and it's an article about Logan Paul finding out that his stalker, again, unalived himself. So this seems to be a common theme. These stalkers seem to be struggling with potentially depression, suicidal thoughts, mental illness. But Logan Paul states that he actually has empathy for his stalker. Logan Paul's stalker was known as Taj DeAndre Spite, and he was obsessed with Logan Paul. He actually once trespassed in his home back in 2018. So Logan Paul went out for dinner, he came home, and this man was sleeping on his couch.
So at this point, guys, we are assuming like the absolute worst. I didn't know what to do. Again, this is a scenario I've never been in my life. What would you do? I don't know, but here's what we did.
The man's entrance resulted in a confrontation, and Paul actually detained the trespasser and, quote, wrestled him to the ground before calling the police.
Yo! Who the f*** are you? Who the f*** are you? Speak slowly. My boy, we are about to f***ing murk you. All due fairness, he wasn't like really aggravated. He was just kind of like chill and just charging his phone.
Well, just the fact that he came in the house.
It's a little up. Yeah. Really up. I feel like the kid made a mistake. God knows for what reason how that happened. But seriously, if there's one thing I've learned in the past month, it's forgiveness. Okay? So like, I don't feel like pressing charges because I don't feel like he came in here with malicious intent.
Now, I do feel the need to say, I think it's very lovely that Logan Paul has empathy for this man. I also believe that it is a very different situation. You know, most women could not detain and wrestle a man to the ground or have empathy for somebody who's harassed them in that way. And most people are not professional wrestlers or have the physique or the muscle mass or the fighting skills that Logan Paul has. And it almost seems like, this is something that I kind of thought about whilst researching for today's video, it almost feels as if you have to have incredible muscle strength or fighting ability like Logan Paul in order to feel safe in this world. Research in the United States and Australia on stalkers who have entered the criminal justice system suggests that at least 50% and potentially up to 75% of this group experience some sort of mental disorder, whether it be personality disorders, schizophrenia, psychotic disorders, depression, substance use, things like that. And I think maybe to you, that's really no surprise. Reading that, I personally wasn't surprised by that. I don't believe that somebody who is quite mentally sane or not experiencing any mental illness is going to go ahead and become utterly obsessed with someone in this regard and stalk them to the point where they feel like their life is in danger, or potentially go as far as to unalive them.
What do they want? They just want to be with you all the time?
I've had many discussions about this. Why does a stalker stalk?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, most of the stalkers that we've covered the cases about, the people who've been stalked, are males. Obviously, males stalk so much more than females. The male ego and how it kind of spins off axis, like not knowing if someone could be a stalker, is very interesting too, because they could go through their whole life and all of a sudden something triggers that within their brain, within their psyche, in order to start stalking. And as you just said, the chase sometimes and the obsession may be more of the satisfaction than the actual results of a healthy relationship, to be fair. Like, how dare you do this to me? How could you reject me like this? And there's something sort of caught up in between there that's very dangerous and unfortunately very addicting.
If you want to share in the comments down below the laws regarding stalking where you are, do you feel like they're enough? Do you feel safe? Do you feel like the government and the criminal justice system does enough for stalking and harassment? Do you personally feel safe and protected? From my understanding, documenting every incident is of utmost importance, like being incredibly specific down to the date, the time, because stalking often involves like a long-term pattern, and apparently recording every incident is the best way to get these people behind bars, or to get them at least charged, or to result in some type of positive outcome for the victim. But unfortunately, this means that this can go on for what feels like forever. And there are so many psychological side effects, and it's so damaging for people to have to experience this and endure this on an ongoing long-term basis in order to feel as if they can even get anywhere with it or be able to do something about it. And I think that's what is so incredibly upsetting about this whole thing. Because there is some truth to it. You know, you hear people say, well, unfortunately it's a tricky situation because in a lot of cases you can't really do much about it until something bad happens. And by then, a lot of the time it's too late.
Do you understand?
Well, I'll be honest, I don't really understand.
There are countless videos on TikTok of women sharing their experiences with stalkers, with people who have harassed them for years.
So I'm dealing with a stalker situation.
This guy had the most demonic glow to his eyes I have ever seen. I cannot describe it. All I knew is that I saw evil and darkness, and in that moment, I was terrified.
And I was like, bro, there's no way this is my stalker. And so I look, and sure enough, it was him. And I was like, oh, hell no.
There was a silhouette of a figure standing in my bedroom doorway.
He left the empty parking spot and hid behind a car. So now he knows what car I drive and where I live, just not my apartment.
She would chase me down the stairs with the W word. She would knock on my door and scream. She followed me to the gym. You're wondering, Anastasia, why didn't you call the police? Well, I did. Multiple times. And you know what they did? Absolutely nothing. I had to call them for them to take me to my apartment every single night. And they were too scared to come without enforcement because they'd never seen a case like that. They were too scared to enter her house. Tried getting a restraining order against her, couldn't.
At this point, I told the police, I told him about this guy, that he knows where I live, knows where I work.
I can honestly talk about this for so long. I have so many videos. I have a whole album in my phone called Stalker that has every video and all the info about this, so I could talk about it forever.
There are so many comments under these videos of women traumatized, sharing their experiences, being like, I'm going through it right now, I'm living this right now, this has been my life for, 3, 4, 5 years. Something needs to change. Stalking cases are difficult to prove when the evidence is only testimony by the alleged victim about the defendant's stalking behavior without third-party witnesses or physical evidence of the stalking, and prosecutors are likely to drop charges in such cases. I want to read this one particular article. I'm probably not going to read it in its full, but I will have it linked. This article just came out September of this year. A woman was charged with stalking me. 6 years later, she says she's moving into the next street. For 3 years, I was stalked by a woman I had never met. When the stalking started, this woman was a former girlfriend of the man I had recently began dating. By the time she was charged with unlawful stalking more than 3 years later, my partner and I were married. We bought a home together. Our children had moved from primary to high school. Life went on, but she was always there. During this time, I received continuous streams of direct messages via various social media channels and text. If I blocked her account, she would make new ones, sometimes in her own name and other times using fake names. I followed the usual advice, block and ignore, but the more I ignored it, the longer it went on. And the longer it went on, the more intense it became. My online identity was stolen, my address was posted online, she knew where I'd been, she knew where I lived. How? I may never know. This is really f***ed up. You ready? My restraining order and the perpetrator's probation period ended in January of this year, so January 2024. In the lead up to this date, I was made aware of a new social media account in the perpetrator's name. I advised police, who said they'd add it to the file, though this was not a breach, they told me. Several more posts were made with clear but subtle references to me. I blocked the account and tried to put her out of my mind. Slowly but surely the posts continued, each one a little more direct, but still not enough to report. And then, 6 months after my restraining order ended, the person convicted of stalking me for years, who was not local to me, posted publicly that she was moving to my suburb and into the street adjacent to mine. She has ensured I know she's still watching 6 years later. When I contacted police with my concerns, I was told any new action would have to be investigated as a separate stalking matter, rendering the extensive history of stalking irrelevant. Completely irrelevant. You can go on to read this entire article if you like. I highly recommend. It is a really well-written piece. I will have it linked below. But again, this just highlights the incredibly flawed system in which we live. This woman, again, she's not an influencer. We're now talking about someone who is not an influencer. And I think so many people, and I honestly thought this when I started researching for this video, because I would see these videos of people sharing their story times of their stalker. And I'm like, why would you do that? Like, you're probably making them angry, or you're probably giving them the intention that they want and they crave, and it's just gonna make it worse. But I suppose sometimes it can get to a point where you feel so alone and the police can't help you or won't help you, and your reports and these incidences that you're logging are going unanswered, or it's not feeling like it's making a difference. So sometimes speaking publicly is probably a way to feel safer because you're shining a light on the situation so people know, hey, I'm watching you, I know you're watching me. These people, these people that I'm sharing my story with also know that you exist, so don't do anything.
So if you're ever in a situation where somebody's scaring you, stalking you, just being overall creepy, here's my best tip. Tell as many of your close friends and family members as you can. Let them know about the situation so that they can be there for extra support. Share your location with your close friends and close family members indefinitely so that if something were to happen, they can find your phone. And lastly, document everything. Take screenshots of everything. Keep everything. Because if something were to escalate and you need to go get a restraining order, you want to have all the evidence that you can have possible so that the judge grants your order.
What I'm kind of wondering if it's why they do it, because sometimes these victims feel so helpless, they feel like they have nothing else to do. There's also another story that I found from a mother in Melbourne who actually lost her daughter. I'm going to have a change.org petition linked in the description. If you are able to sign it, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm sure the family of this Celeste would also appreciate it. This petition is advocating for mandatory life sentences for these type of people because it is the strongest way to denounce the crime, life for a life. Celeste was a 23-year-old woman living in Victoria who was unalived by a stalker.
Just before 4 a.m, armed with a hammer and a large kitchen knife, Seiko smashed through Celeste's bedroom window and violently attacked her.
She was asleep in her bed in our home.
I was compelled to contact this mother after watching her 60 Minutes interview. At the time of filming this, I wasn't able to hear from her, but if that changes, I would love to get her on and for her to be able to shine some light on this. But essentially, Celeste Mano was 23 years old when her life was taken from her in the most brutal ways possible. So from what I'm aware, she was not an influencer. She didn't post a lot on social media. I mean, no more than the average 23-year-old. She was somebody who worked at a call center and a colleague of hers became obsessed with her. I'm going to share with you clips from this 60 Minutes interview.
Celeste Mano was 23 when she was killed by a man who had been relentlessly stalking her for more than a year. These are the messages that haunt Aggie, a mum who will never get over the pain of not being able to protect her daughter from the grip of Louise Seiko. Celeste worked in the same company, but only knew Seiko briefly. The events that would lead to an awful tragedy began in June 2019, when Seiko was sacked. As the team leader in the telephone call centre, Celeste had the job of escorting him out of the building. It was probably the most time they had spent together. That didn't stop the 35-year-old from becoming obsessed with her, though.
Did she ever mention Seiko?
Never, except for the day he left. She goes, I really felt bad for him, so I just extended my hand to wish him all the best. She goes, and he plants a kiss on my cheek, Mum. I must have gone tomato red. I was so embarrassed. And I said, oh, you're such a drama queen, sweetie. He's probably had a crush on you all along and you haven't even realised, is how it all started.
His fixation with Celeste quickly grew. One message became many more.
I said to Celeste, look, Celeste, sweetie, this guy knows where you work. We don't know who he is and what he wants. The last thing we need is for him to find out where you live. And she goes, that's crazy. Gosh, Mum, I'm sure he's just going to get bored.
But he didn't. After 6 months, Celeste and Aggie had to do something.
And when you walk into the police station, what do they say to you?
He hasn't committed a crime. There's nothing we can do about it. He looked at Celeste and he said, well, just ignore it. And she goes, I have been ignoring. And then he said, oh, you know, that's social media these days. If you don't like it, get off social media.
The Instagram messages he was sending also became sexually explicit. They were now so worried about Seiko, Aggie and Celeste went back to police. And this time, finally, an officer listened.
He says, have you been to the police before? And I said, yes, actually 6 months ago. He said, let's just say some of us do our job better than others.
It was the first time police actually took down Louise Seiko's name. They served him with a personal safety intervention order, but Aggie wasn't convinced.
So you walk away.
And we walk away.
And do you feel, finally, we've
No.
got some protection?
No. I said to Celeste, This is just a piece of paper, sweetie. Let's remember that.
That one precious photo triggered ex-colleague Luay Seiko. It was November 16, 2020. Seiko smashed through Celeste's bedroom window and violently attacked her.
A million pieces of glass just crashing. And all of a sudden I heard, oh. So I remember just going, Celeste, and I just ran out of bed and I'm just screaming her name down the hallway. I go, Celeste, sweetie, what happened? And I realise that I'm running all over glass, I'm seeing blood.
Outside, security footage shows Seiko fleeing in his car. As the paramedics arrive, inside, Aggie is desperately fighting to save her daughter's life.
Breathe, sweetie, please don't leave me, don't leave me. And then one of them stops me and he says, this is a crime scene, we found a knife. And in that moment, all I said was, what? Oh my God, he killed her. He said, you know who did this? I said, yeah, yes.
His next move proved just how premeditated his murder plan had been.
He drove to the police station straight away and handed himself in.
Jesus Christ. Mark my words. He's going to try and get off on mental impairment.
He was sentenced to at least 30 years in jail.
Aggie's determined to stop such a senseless crime happening again.
There's no parent, wherever they live, that are going to be fine with the laws the way they are. Celeste had dreams like any other 23-year-old. She doesn't get a second chance. So I'm supposed to be okay with him getting a second chance if and when he's released from parole? No.
Having someone at you constantly and this anticipation that they could turn up anywhere, they could call you anywhere. I mean, the psychological harm of that, it really isn't well understood and well recognised within criminal justice systems.
Psychologist Professor Troy McEwen is an expert in stalking behaviour.
What disappoints you the most about Celeste Mano's death?
The government's response to the VLRC report. I've had cases that I've worked with where victims have literally had to change their name, move interstate. You know, their whole life is upended. It's enormously destructive. We need to do better, fundamentally.
I was very moved by this interview. It actually left me in tears. This girl, 23 years old, nobody deserves this. Absolutely nobody, and it's disgusting. And the police that weren't doing their job properly, again, absolutely disgusts me. I don't know about you in the comments down below. I've had my fair share of experiences with issues and having police not really doing their job properly or being too lazy to deal with the paperwork, so they just brush me off, and it's a horrible feeling. And to know that this woman was so deeply let down by the system disgusts me, like deep inside disgust, angers me, infuriates me. It's so sad. And a restraining order was not enough to stop him. His mental illness was taken into consideration with his sentence, and I think he got 36 years in jail. He will be released as a 60-something-year-old man, and he will be able to live out the rest of his life. He will be able to live more of a life than Celeste ever did. And that absolutely infuriates me. So if you want to sign that petition, I'd really appreciate it. Links in the description. I'm so sorry that this video was not like light and fun, but I felt really compelled to make this, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below, whether, like I said, if you feel safe enough to share your experience. But I think sometimes I feel like, and I've noticed this, like maybe I spent so much of my time in my 20s asleep, but I am so sick of feeling as if the system constantly protects these people. I want witch hunts. The amount of times that I know for myself personally, I'm watching the news and I'll hear about a child predator or a pedophile or something of that nature. We don't get to see a photo of that person. I would love to, personally. I would love to know what that person looks like, so I know what to look out for and I know what to avoid. And I hate the way that this system is set up. It feels as if it's protecting these people. I hate to end this video with like stay safe and like tips, because I feel like even there is so much you can do, but it may not be enough. And again, this is a result of the fact that warning signs blaringly obvious that things need to change, especially with the rise of social media. Don't post your real life whereabouts. Like the amount of influencers I know who like post in real time when they're on vacation and like they left their house, just like they've just left it. That amazes me. I mean, that's not really a stalking point of view. That's more of like a safety of your home and your possessions kind of thing. I wish I could just say that living a private life and being more private being more vague with your whereabouts, not posting on social media in real time is enough. But it's not. We know this, it's not enough. Don't post your whereabouts in real time. Be very cautious about what you post, what you choose to share, who you choose to interact with. Every now and again, turn around or look in your rearview mirror when you're driving and be very aware of your whereabouts. It's one of the many reasons why I just don't believe sitting on our phones in this trance while we're walking is good, because it makes us asleep. We're literally asleep. We're just in this autopilot. And it's very easy for a stalker to watch someone and to follow someone who's literally just on their phone scrolling in a trance. I'm gonna have another few linked for you here if you want to check those out. Thank you so much for joining me in today's video, and I will see you in my next one. Hopefully, if I didn't scare you off with this incredibly dark video. Thanks for being here. My next video is going to be a little bit lighter and more fun. Thank you for sticking around for this one. I really appreciate it.